Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium. This is Thursday, October 23rd, 2014. I'm back on my regular schedule. Um, I want to thank everybody, first of all, for the generous donations. There was a particular gentleman and then that dear lady that you both know who you are. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, it came in very handy because I've been gathering books for the next couple of books. But anyway, today I want to comment on the recent death of the CEO of the French oil giant Total, Monsieur Christophe de Margerie, who was killed in a plane crash in Moscow. This one's curious. This one deserves our attention for a number of reasons that I'll get into. This article was reported in the Economic Times, and the title of the article is CEO of French oil giant Total, Christophe de Margerie, killed in Moscow plane crash. I want to read the beginning few paragraphs of this article and then a couple of paragraphs toward the end of the article because this is huge news. The dateline is Moscow. The CEO of the French oil company Total, Monsieur Christophe de Margerie, died in a plane crash at Moscow airport after his private jet struck a snowplow on takeoff. Total confirmed the death of the 63-year-old on Tuesday. The Total Group confirms with great and profound sadness that its CEO, Christophe de Margerie, died last night shortly after 10 p.m. Paris time in an air crash at Vnukovo Airport in Moscow following a collision with a snow-removing machine, Total said in a statement. This is dateline, incidentally, October 21st, just 2 days ago. Just hours earlier, de Margerie had met Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev at his country residence outside of Moscow to discuss foreign investment in Russia, Vedomosti Business Daily reported. Now, let me continue with this before I comment a little bit on what this might mean. The crash is being investigated by the Interstate Aviation Committee, which probes all Russian air crashes, and experts from Russia's federal aviation industry, the airport said. The head of the federal aviation industry, Alexander Neradko, had taken charge of the investigation, and that's reported by the Russian news agency Interfax. The plane's black boxes have been removed. Airport spokeswoman Yelena Krylova told RIA Novosti news agency. Moscow transport investigators said in a statement that they had opened a criminal probe into breaches of aviation safety rules causing multiple deaths through negligence, which carries a maximum jail term of 7 years. The French side is informed. They should send experts. This will happen very soon. The source was cited as saying. Now, let's stop right there. I have a few comments I want to make before I continue reading. Let's notice something. It's not very often that you hear of a major airport and a major international hub like Moscow having plane collisions with snowplows. And clearly the Russians are either suspecting something because they've placed this under criminal investigation and they have invited the French, but they've removed the black boxes. So the first thing that suggests to me, pardon me, is that this might be a message from the so-called hardliners behind President Putin to the more pro-Western oligarch faction within Russia that is behind Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, although the two have worked and collaborated and cooperated before. And that is a possible reading. In other words, this might have been a message sent to Medvedev or whatever, but I doubt it. All right. In other words, I think there's another reading here of what's going on, and it's much more important. To get that, we have to go all the way to the end of this article. Listen to this. Total said in September that work on constructing a new natural gas liquefaction plant in Yamal in northwestern Siberia was continuing despite EU and US sanctions on Russia over its role in the conflict in the Ukraine. Total is developing the plant with Novatek of Russia and the Chinese oil group CNPC. Total announced in May that it has signed a deal with Russia's second biggest oil from Lukoil to explore and develop shale oil deposits in western Siberia. But de Margerie told the Financial Times last month that the project had been halted due to Western sanctions, unquote. So in other words, it appears as if Total may have been set to defy the Western sanctions, and that it was up to its earlobes in business agreements with the Russian giant Lukoil and with the Chinese oil concern CNPC to develop all of those natural gas and oil resources in western Siberia that Russia and China are counting on to negotiate their energy agreements between each other. So what it looks to me, when you couple this with the statement that Russia suspects criminality and that they have invited French experts to Russia and removed the black boxes, it looks to me like what Russia may be doing is saving those black boxes for the French so that they can get there and listen to them, all right? And they want the French involved in what will be apparently an international criminal investigation, which indicates that Russia, as I'm reading the tea leaves here, which indicates that Russia strongly suspects that something was done to murder the CEO of Total. Now, if that's the case, I want you to follow me a little bit further. This means it has to be coming from inside the Western elite somewhere. In other words, it looks to me like Monsieur Margerie strayed off script. And the script, of course, are the sanctions against Russia, and Mr. Putin is a bad guy, Russia's to blame for the Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So in other words, they just sent a very powerful message to a very powerful man. You don't stray off script. In other words, these people are killers, folks. There's no two ways about it. When necessary, they kill with impunity. And this man certainly strayed over the line. Now, it means something else, and I hope you picked up on it. Because if Russia is suspecting criminal negligence, a conveniently placed criminal negligence, and they're inviting the French in, chances are they're not only inviting in representatives of the French government, they're probably inviting in representatives of Total itself to talk about this whole thing at a very high level, which I imagine will be very, very quietly done and done underneath the radar. And we won't know that this meeting is taking place until after the news services in Russia, possibly in France, announce it. At that point, it's going to be very interesting to see what they announce, because this could be a story that will shake loose more European discontent for having to go along with the USA imposed sanctions on Russia. Now, one final thing that it means, that is that if you look carefully, if this was a deliberate action on the part of the Western Anglosphere, the power elite, whatever you wish to call them, then it means they have on the ground human intelligence resources in Moscow able to pull off a stunt like this, all right, to take out the CEO of Total. Or they at least have the capability of interfering with the normal operations of that airport, substituting someone to put the snowplow out there on the runway, or drugging the snowplow operator or something. In other words, this also sent a strong signal to Moscow that there are intelligence resources inside the Russian Federation itself able to pull off this kind of operation at a very high level. So in other words, there's another message being sent with the murder of this man, if indeed it was murder. And that is, we can probably reach any one of you at the top level of Russian government and corporate world. And if that's the case, I keep saying this over and over again, folks. If the Russians are reading things this way, if this type of analysis is what is being reported to President Putin, then again, I'll remind you, covert operations is a game that two people can play. All right. And we're probably going to see a lot more of this type of activity, CEOs of various corporations being taken out by this side or that side, because now this is a signal, this is a strong signal that the elite mafia wars have begun. I've been saying for many, many years that the power elite appears to be fissuring and fracturing along traditional factional interests at the very, very top. And this could be yet another signal that we're looking at some sort of mafia war at the very top of the global corporate elite. So watch this story, folks. I think this is a significant one. I want to thank everybody that brought my attention to this almost as soon as it happened. This is a significant story. That's it, folks, for today's news and views from the Nefarium. I'm Joseph P. Farrell. God bless everybody, and I'll see you on the flip side.